Hey there, this is Niels Beardfoot, and today I want to show you how to make a Viking style leather belt. Start with a pattern. You can use this one from my Etsy shop or create your own. Make sure to print it out in the size that fits to you, so I recommend a paper model first. After cutting the pattern out, I use my strap cutter. The usual maximum width is 10 centimeters. I use 13 centimeters. It was difficult to get the arm always in a right angle, and two blades actually broke, but with the help of another person this should be fine. For the smaller straps you can easily do it on your own. Also, you could just mark the pattern on the leather and cut it out with a box cutter and a ruler. For this project I use 3.5mm thick wedge tanned leather, which is around 9 ounces. Next, you moisten the piece you want to work with from both sides. This gives the wedge tanned leather the ability to keep the imprints you put on, like marking all the lines, like here. Using an edge groover in the opposite direction gives you a nice parallel line to your edge. When the leather is mostly dry but still cool on the touch, we can start with our ornaments. With a swivel knife I cut all the lines I marked, and later on use stamps and hammer to get nice imprints. I mostly use a beveler, a backgrounder, and a stamp for the borderline in a Viking style. To give the piece some used look, I use a bone folder, my swivel knife and my thumbnail to add some battle marks. On the base piece I use a hammer and a stone to get in a rough surface. On the straps I get a parallel line in as orientation for stamps. Here I use the Viking border stamp. And also for the runes I got stamps, but those you can also simply cut with your swivel knife. Next, we punch all the holes on the straps and on the holder. Thin out the area at the holder and the straps to ensure easier fitting. Bevel the edge on both sides to make burnishing easier and create a nice edge. For dyeing, I personally like the oil-based dyes. Here I use a walnut together with a show brown. It is simply applied with a sponge. Definitely use gloves. And don't forget the edges. For the straps I use dip dyeing, which is faster but also takes up more dye. Simply put it in and put it away. Even with gloves, this sometimes happens. For pieces where I don't want to dye everything, I use a brush to paint just the areas that I want to do. Just make sure not to overload your brush with dye, else it might drip on the piece on areas you don't want to put dye on. And also here, don't forget the edges. I put on a resist to seal the leather and prepare it for the antique gel. I recommend at least 2 coats that dried completely before you start with the antique gel. When you also put the resist on the edges, you can use the moisture to burnish them. Since I forgot to paint the chains, I do it now. I use regular acrylic paint that will be later on sealed by more resist. Also, I went over the brown area again with the dye and just tapped away a little bit with a paper towel. This will leave a nice pattern. And the resist makes sure the dye does not get in the leather so fast. When everything is dry, you can start with the antique gel. Here I use a brush to apply it, so I get in all the deep cuts and areas. And then I just take a paper towel and wipe all the excess away. Usually I apply 2 coats of antique gel. With another coat of resist, I seal the antique gel on the leather. Just make sure it does not pool. Next, get the buckles on the straps and use glue and rivets to attach them permanently. Now we can start to assemble. I start with the holder here. I just put it in the correct position as shown on the pattern and mark all the holes to punch and punch the holes. Also I mark where to roughen up the leather for the glue. I rough it up and put glue on the piece and put it together. Here I can use the rivets and the rivet holes as guide. I use a wing divider to get in the correct position of all the holes for the edge weaving. You could also simply trace the holes from the pattern. Next, punch the holes. Don't punch all the holes now, just until you get to the next piece. There you mark where to rough up the leather and rough up the leather. Same thing as with the holder, put on some glue and press it on. And you also can hammer it down and use clamps to help to fixate. Same with the other side of the straps. I cut them to length, that is fitting for me. You have to check that first. And then glue them on, hammer them down. Rough up the leather on the straps and put on contact cement on both pieces that you want to glue together. And after a few minutes of drying time, you can press them together. Again, use holes and marked lines as guide, and then hammer them together. There might be some excess leather on the edge. You can cut it away and use sandpaper to smooth out the edge. Then you have to bevel the edge again, put on dye, resist and burnish it. To secure the ends, I punched some sewing holes, and also I had to use an awl to get through the whole leather, and then I start sewing. Now I punch all the remaining holes along the edge for weaving. For the keeper, I use some scrap pieces of leather to get some distance between the keeper itself and the base piece between the straps. I glue them on the keeper and mark where to punch the holes, and get in some long rivets, which are in my case screw rivets. I put them on and secure the keeper on the base piece. For the edge weaving, the technique is fairly simple. You get in the beginning, you have a few centimeters left, you get in a loop and you go through the loop again, and you tighten the first loop and then you tighten the second loop. And repeat this with the next hole. Get it in, create a loop, go through the loop, tighten the first loop and then tighten the second loop. Make sure that it sits all correct and your top grain is always upwards. Create a loop, go through the loop once again, tighten the first loop and then tighten the second loop. When your lace is at the end, weave in the ends like shown. To secure the ends of the top piece even more, I decided to put on some holes and also screw rivets. Also, I forgot here to set some rivets. For the lashes at the holder, I punch in now the holes. These are designed to fit on a bird or a cattle skull, like shown here, but you also could put there a pouch or a weapon holder. I link you the tutorials for the skulls here on the top right corner. And that's it, you're done. I hope you like it. Check out my other videos and my shop, and see you next time. Ciao!